Will the real creator please stand? When Stan and I started the search for our first Seth Network office, we decided the price range we could afford, the amount of space needed, and the area of town we wanted. All of it was based on our beliefs of the moment, and they were based on the reflection of our reality at the moment, i.e., the amount of money flowing into the company, the number of people we thought we might hire over a year's period as a projection of our anticipated growth, etc. Within 3 days, we found the perfect space and signed a lease. Now, what really happened in that scenario? Were coincidence and luck at play when we happened to drive by that building and see a for lease sign? Or did the universe think we were good guys and bless us with the answer to our desire? Do we thank the universe for this bounty of riches or count ourselves lucky? Basically, neither. Let's give credit where credit is due. We created it through our thoughts. Sure, the universe supported our wishes, and our inner selves even nudged us to drive down that particular street so we might see the for lease sign. Coincidence is part of the solution leading to a desired outcome. But who started the formation of the event? Who polished it into a finished product? Thank goodness our inner selves hear our thoughts and help fulfill them. But if we continually assign the fruits of our labors to their side of the ledger, we'll never recognize our incredible power and, therefore, will never consciously use it. And don't forget that based on our beliefs and attitudes, the universe also forms the event that leads to a broken leg. Whom do we thank for that little prize? It reminds me of a conversation I had with a man several years ago. He told me of a woman who was killed when a large piece of construction machinery ran out of control and dragged her to her death. On the same day, he rolled his car and came away unscathed. My guardian angel was with me, he said, with relief and gratitude in his voice. Where was the woman's? I wondered. Out to lunch? If the flow of magazine articles and books on the subject is any indication, there seems to be a great deal of interest in the power of prayer right now. And it's true that the results can be spectacular. But what is really going on when we pray? Who actually answers our call? If Seth's right, when we pray, it's our inner self who hears our plea and responds accordingly, not a personified deity. And why aren't all prayers answered? It depends on what people will or will not allow to happen based on their beliefs and the strength of thought and desire behind the request. If their belief in God's omnipotence and goodwill toward them is strong enough, and they ask for a miracle, they just may pull it off. But watch out if they think they're sinners and God has no use for them. When we get a grasp on the true nature of our reality, we breathe a sign of relief that we no longer must rely on God's good wishes to heal our hurts and solve our problems. Surely God must also breathe a sigh of relief. He no longer is called upon to perform miracles that he can't possibly produce because we won't let him. After all, it's our reality. Perfect faith is not a belief in God's protection, but a reflection of our belief in the combined power of our inner self and our outer self, a power that knows no bounds. Perfect faith says we can live our lives however we choose to, under the guidelines established by simultaneous time and the creative process of thought. It says we have complete ability, based on the structure of our chosen reality, to ask for help and receive it every time we desire it strongly enough and we allow it. And why not? We're dealing with a loving energy that has our best interests at heart. It should, seeing that it forms us and sustains us every moment of our life. Our own personal God, you see? Take your choice, pay the price. The question that usually comes up following the assimilation of the ideas of simultaneous time and constant creation is, when an event is over, it's over, right? I'm sure you figured out the answer by now, but when it was brought home to me in living color, it did make an unforgettable impact. I was the guest on a popular Manhattan radio show one day, and the host gave me an audio tape of our on-the-air conversation. Several days later, when I returned to Washington, I listened to the tape while out on a walk, and my enthusiasm knew no bounds. Darn good, I thought. I'm getting the hang of these interviews, and this one was dynamite. Weeks went by before Stan heard the recording. We went for a ride on the Washington coast, and into the tape player went my prize. But from the beginning, I knew something was wrong. Who was this person who couldn't seem to form a concrete idea without hemming and hawing her way through it? What happened to the bright, articulate answer so confidently remembered? I was stunned and embarrassed. Stan was amused. Had I literally changed the conversation on that tape? And if so, why? The committee said, yes, I had. They said my perception of myself changed over the weeks following the show, and doubts in general had arisen about my abilities. The tape that Stan heard was a new rendition of the first, an alteration based on my present thoughts. Now, the question on my mind was, which one was real? Their answer? Whichever you will accept. It is, you see, your reality. So, which did I choose? I don't know. I've not had the courage to listen to the tape again. And that is probably the answer. Deeper implications for a sick kitten. The same little kitten I mentioned in Chapter 2, Miss Motley, was ill another day. Stan and I isolated her in the bathroom for a time while we talked to the committee. Our concern was that she had a sickness that was infectious, and since our house draws island cats like metal to a magnet, we worried about the spread of illness. When we asked if Miss Motley had an infection, the committee replied, "Do you want an infectious cat?" With indignation, we said, "Of course not." And they said, "Well, it's up to you." Wait just a minute. We can't control Missy's choice of illness. No, the committee responded, but you can and do choose your probabilities. If you want to experience one with an infectious cat, you will. Missy doesn't have to volunteer to be the sick one, but another will step in if she refuses to share that probability with you. You can create your reality, but you can't create Missy's. It seems we can invite someone to participate in our reality, but whether or not they accept is up to them. Since we reside in our individual space continuums, what happens to me is all my creation, from the literal manifestation of my environment to the probability selections that happen therein. Missy could not be infectious in my space continuum unless I allowed it, and I couldn't force her to play by my script if she chose not to. That, of course, is why my mother can die and move her participation out of my space continuum, and even though I create my own reality, I can't stop her. The agreement between my mother and me to share the probability of her death is decided by us in Framework 2, outside the realm of emotion that would automatically limit our decisions. Back to Missy. Stan and I chose not to invite a kitten to play the role of an infectious cat, And the proof of that decision was that neither Missy nor another one did so. What still left me with questions, though, was why Stan and I would have considered a probability where a kitten would have been asked to do such a thing. The committee suggested we look at events simply as experiences, with less emotion driving the questions. It's true that our beliefs, attitudes, and desire create our realities, but there is more going on than meets the physical eye. For instance, assume for a moment I had desire to feel needed, and in Framework 2 I studied the options that would fulfill that need. Some possibilities were apparent through my interactions with cats, because they are an integral part of my days. There existed a probability where a cat could become ill and I could nurse it. After exploring the ramifications of this decision, we both gave it a thumbs up. In it then came to physical reality. My need was met, the cat's was met. The cat chose her probability just as surely as I did mine. Why she picked illness is between her and her inner self. But in the spirit of cooperation, we worked out the details and played out the scene. The anatomy of events. Several months ago, Stan was searching computer stores and mail order catalogs for a specific $300 fax card for one of our laser printers. They were difficult to find for various reasons, and he'd almost decided to accept an alternative solution. Then one day, while exiting a local electronics store after one last futile search of the shelves, he on impulse asked the clerk if they sold such a product. The clerk said no, they didn't, but it just so happened that it was being offered as a free gift to all who purchased the same brand of laser printer as ours. He asked Stan if we'd bought our printer at that store. And when Stan said no, the clerk told him to wait a moment while he talked to the manager. The result? Stan walked out of the store with a free fax card. Another time, Stan was interested in a piece of software, and once again, for various reasons, it was difficult to find. He finally stumbled onto it in a catalog, and with relief he placed an order. 3 months later, after numerous delays, a company representative called to say that they could not deliver the product due to problems with the developer and proceeded to cancel the order. Not a week later, Stan walked into a computer store where he had a passing acquaintance with a clerk. With no knowledge of his desire or search, she said, "I bet you're interested in this software. Just thought I'd let you know that it's on sale. Dirt cheap." And Stan finally owned his software. Is there a universal structure behind such events, or are they the result of coincidence? Luck? Or the gift of a nice guy, God, the universe? Let's not lose track of the fact that we create our own reality. We're not talking about keeping a positive mindset in the face of our problems and calling that creating our reality. And we're not talking about toiling long hours on the job, becoming successful, and assuming the first was the cause of the second, and calling that creating our reality. We're talking about the whole of our existence, and that means everything. Everything that happens to us. So let's assume Stan created the situations mentioned above. But how? If you remember, when all that is created individualized consciousness, it also created the infinite probabilities that each consciousness could ever experience. That means that every probable action we can ever take is not only known, it is already a patterned event outside physical time and space. What actualizes an event into physicality? Thought, beliefs, intent, desire, action. Stan wanted both the fax card and the software. Each desire created a working model around which events could gather. He thought about what he wanted, pictured it in his mind's eye, and took actions on his thoughts. Meaning, he visited the appropriate stores, searched catalogs, placed orders, etc. This activity of thought was responsible for the emanation of electromagnetic energy units from Stan's consciousness, and these EE units drew others to them until they formed a structure that would support the probability of Stan getting what he wanted. Could he have brought his prizes into physical reality sooner? Sure, if he had expended more intensity of desire over a more focused time frame. Maybe he could have moved them in at a quicker pace. If he assumed he could find what he wanted without delays, possibly he could have owned them sooner. The overriding factor in whether or not his wish was fulfilled was, however, whether it fit in with what he would allow to occur. Remember, Stan was surrounded by all probabilities that possibly could have happened around his desire. He moved from one probability to another as the moments progressed, selecting first this one and then that one to actualize. But there was always a more direct course to his goal if he had allowed himself to follow it. How did Stan just happen to enter the stores that finally responded to his desires? Through intuition and impulse, thanks to his inner self. That's how we find what we want, go where we go. It's the job of our inner self to supply the means to fulfill our wishes. Once we have enough strength of belief behind our thoughts to activate EE units into actuality. Stan's process of searching for the goods, thinking about them, and even becoming frustrated at certain turns of events built up the two magnetic fields to the point where they could finally burst forth as the final events under the directorship of his inner self. But there were always active probabilities where he never would have received what he desired. Why? Not enough desire, intent, focus, belief in himself, in his worthiness, in his ability to find them, in his on and on ad infinitum. Thought started the process, thought continued the process, thought slowed it down, thought finalized it, and thought could have stopped the actualization completely. Stan's inner self could have directed his steps to the front door of the computer store, and Stan, using his free will, could have walked away without even realizing what he was missing. We do it all the time. Breaking the barrier of thoughts. As our ideas of time, space, and consciousness expand, we start to break the barriers of thought that have snuggled us into half sleep, cozied us into half lives. Simply by seeing ourselves as multidimensional personalities with the power of creation at our fingertips, alive in a magnificent spacious present with ties to great sources of energy outside our reality, frees us to explore far beyond what we've been told is possible or real. When we can not only come to accept unusual occurrences in our lives, but explore them with enthusiasm for their psychic causes, we bound ahead in our pioneering efforts to understand creation with clarity and intelligence. Unending questions arise as we forge onward, such as, is New York as safe as Cape Cod to the consciousnesses who believe in a friendly universe? Isn't it ironic to sue for a broken leg caused by a fallen tree on the neighbor's property when guess who orchestrated the scene? Where does blame fit into the you create your own reality picture? And responsibility? Victimization? Aggression? In fact, if no one played victim, would any consciousness come into physical reality to play aggressor? If so, who would the aggressor bully? Some excellent questions for our race are: how many worlds are there in the field of probabilities, and which one do we wish to inhabit? And maybe most importantly, how do we get to it? Chapter 5. In your system of reality, you are learning what mental energy is and how to use it. You do this by constantly transforming your thoughts and emotions into physical form. You are supposed to get a clear picture of your inner development by perceiving the exterior environment. What seems to be a perception, an objective concrete event independent from you, is instead the materialization of your own inner emotions, energy, and mental environment. Seth, the Seth Material, Chapter 10. Power Hitters of the Universe. Now, class, the traffic school officer lectures a room full of moving violation criminals. Statistics prove the effectiveness of wearing seatbelts. It's insanity not to protect yourself from possible harm, even death, by neglecting to buckle up. I think, as I scrunch further down in my chair, what an incredible fallacy. No seatbelt is going to keep me or anyone else from bodily injury if we've set the stage for such. It may protect us for that moment if we allow it, but we'll just find another way of hurting ourselves later. Who in here wears their seatbelt 100% of the time? About 3/4 of the class raised their hands. And how many wear them most of the time? Pretty much the rest of the room wave their arms in the air. He smiles indulgently at them and scolds lightly, running through the same scenario as before. I think I'm off the hook, but no way. Oh, a big smile, like this couldn't be true, but will playfully ask anyway. How many never wear their seatbelt? Up goes my lone hand, slowly. A look of incredulity creases his brow. Then he asks me, why not? Here's where my mind comes to a standstill. How do I say to a group of people I've just met that I don't even have health insurance because I simply know I'll never be in an accident or have a serious illness? I mean, come on. This is mainstream America we're talking to, not our favorite metaphysical friend. I mumble something unintelligible and slink almost off my chair. I have no quick answer for this man, but I'll tell you what. I'm sure glad I hold my beliefs instead of his. Now, all I have to do is figure out why I ended up in traffic school in the first place. Living our beliefs. Our lives are crafted from the subjective landscape of our thoughts and emotions. Our experience is formed through our expectations, which are reflected in our beliefs. Thoughts, feelings, emotions, and attitudes all contribute to the creation of our realities, our lives. They form the blueprint from which events will be chosen and then inserted into physical reality. Our beliefs and intents cause us to pick from an unpredictable group of actions those we want to experience. Until we become aware of what we're thinking and feeling, we can't choose to consciously change circumstances that are not to our liking. Beliefs are no more and no less than strongly held thoughts or thoughts held in a conscious mind with emotion, imagination, and duration. Strong doesn't mean they're constantly running through the mind with brow furrowed and eyes squinted. What gives them their power is our assumption that they are true. So they cruise through our mind, never questions. But there they go, causing us, consciousness that we are, to form events that make us cringe. According to Seth, one emotion has more power than it takes to send a rocket to the moon. And, according to Seth, behind every belief is an emotion or feeling. Listen to this list of beliefs, then, and sense their power. Illness is a fact of life. I'm a survivor. No one appreciates me. I'm a failure. People are stupid. It's all my parents' fault. It's flu season. You just can't walk city streets after dark. Love never lasts. Money slips through my fingers. Cancer is caused by smoking. Luck and fate rule my life. Misery is part of living. Money is the root of all evil. I am overweight. I am ashamed of my sexuality. I don't know how to love. No one understands me. God punishes. Forget that you have abundant proof that these statements are true. That's the nature of a belief, to cloak itself in justified fact. Of course it does. What we believe becomes real. The question is, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Jane Roberts says, our senses present us with a lovely package of the world. We hardly ever realize that it's a do-it-yourself kit, that at other levels we put the pieces together, assemble the ingredients, then present the entire box to our conscious selves, pretending it's a surprise and something entirely apart from us or our creativity. The starting point for the creative cycle is thought. Thought causes us to feel a certain way, and that feeling starts the emanation of electromagnetic energy units. The EEs join together and form various size masses with different intensities, and those masses eventually become material objects or events in our lives. Since a belief is a snugly held thought, the intensity behind the EE units emanated by the consciousness which holds the belief is extraordinarily strong. But what happens, cosmically speaking, when a belief is held? Seth says, the mind is a great organizer, and since a belief reflects an assumption about reality, the mind prepares itself to support the assumption by organizing reality to fit the belief's definition. And how does the mind carry out this not so little feat? By forming events that agree with the belief, by gathering data that supports the belief, by selecting probabilities that reflect the belief. No matter what it is we believe, the power of the mind will sculpt our reality into a dramatization of the belief.